So welcome. So this is time for maintenance tonight. So it's a very interesting topic, pretty close to my heart. And Phil and I have done numerous maintenance reviews over the years, and probably made every mistake there is, and finally hoping to figure it out or share a few things tonight. So just going to share my screen just so that we can see the start of our presentation tonight. So again, just coming on, as I said, tonight I'm actually broadcasting live from Ontario, so I'm a couple of hours difference, and very excited to be on with everyone that could come on today live, and then for those watching the recording. So it's been interesting this month because of being away. We've had some family things that we needed to deal with, and with being away, we actually still continued our maintenance, which normally is done by Phil and I. So this has been probably our first experience of having other support doing it. It's been obviously a learning piece. So I have a lot to share about that, a lot to share about what we've done in the past. So just want to have an opportunity to go through, and really, I don't think we'll keep on too long tonight. But just a chance to go through everything and hopefully connect on some questions or keep the conversation going in the Facebook feed afterwards. So the agenda tonight, essentially, just moving my face out of our way, but our agenda tonight, welcome and introductions. It's not huge. It's just me on tonight, guys, and then any of your questions, hopefully, that I can answer live. So again, I'm Laura Atherton. Anyone that doesn't know me, I'm the owner of Efficient Property Assistance, and I am the Real Laura. So I'm doing a lot of work under reallaura.com, starting a lot of talks, support services. So we'll talk a bit more about that at the end of the meeting tonight. And I have been, working with what was formerly the Landlady Group and now the YYC Rental Housing Providers. Our main focus has been providing support to small self-managing owners. So those of you that are coming on live or listening later, it's really been about sharing that information because it's so hard when you do it alone and we don't know what we don't know. So my husband Phil and I have been investors for just over 10 years now, sitting at about 25 doors currently, looking at greatly increasing our portfolio. We also provide a lot of support to self-managed owners, supporting approximately 100 doors currently. We do exclusively pet-friendly rentals. So I've got lots of stories that I can share a little bit tonight too when we get into maintenance. So general agenda, we're going to talk about property maintenance. Weird, right? That's the topic. So we go over the process, the details, how to schedule, the reviews. I'll send you guys a checklist afterwards, what to look for, what questions to ask. We've got a lot in there. Of course, the true cost of deferred maintenance is that if anybody's heard me talk before, I've got a lot of pieces around that. So we'll dig in a bit. The secret benefits resulting from these checks. And I promise you, it actually isn't all about maintenance. So there's lots more that comes out of these connections. And like I've said, a Q&A, and then we'll do our closing comments and some offers and things that I'll be able to share with the group. So just to close off here so I can see who's coming on, and I'm going to do my best to watch the chat. This is currently live right now. For those watching the recording later, I will be watching the comments. So we want this to be interactive. Please do post questions as they're coming up in the feed. I will make time to respond at the end or throughout the segment as we go. But what does everybody think about? Are these our favorite topics? I think generally not. When I look into things, I do a lot of work, as you know, or as many of you may know, I do a lot of work in finance and bookkeeping and the tax side of things in our business. And I always joke about being anything but budgets and boring. And then I think my topic is boring. And now I move into maintenance, which is usually Phil, my husband. Unfortunately, he wasn't available to come on tonight, but believing me, he'll be watching the chat and very available to answer the questions. But I wonder if this also might be similar to the taxman, whereas it's not something that we're excited to talk about. That generally when we're getting a call about maintenance or some kind of review, it is a stress. It is unexpected. It is, something else that wasn't on. It's so important, as I see Leanne shared, but is generally adding to something else and usually comes at, I find, the worst times. So probably my biggest piece around the process for maintenance is actually time. So that whole not having enough time, and then if we don't make the time now, how much more time and money is later. So I think that's probably the biggest experience I want to share, especially being out of town this current month, in the fact that as difficult as it was still so important that we were ensuring that we had that support for our tenants, that eye on the property. I wonder how many out of town landlords that may be watching this, to just view and see that it's not about set it and forget it. There's a lot of stuff I'll uncover and share a bit tonight, and a lot of it is having that eye on the ball still. Sometimes it isn't getting it all done in the moment, but just being aware and keeping that awareness open. So we look at like how to schedule. So when you think about it, you know, at what scale, like depending on how many properties you have 1 or 5 doors, or if you're a larger landlord with 10 doors, what does that look like? So we've talked about bulk scheduling, so having them all at once, where you just like blast through it. And having them all at once, if you only have 1 or 2, maybe is easier. But if you have 10, it's like, okay, well, which way is it better? Do I do 1 every couple of months, or do I blast through them all at once? I think the main piece around that all is focus. And again, the whole piece around giving enough time for preparation. I think the biggest thing I see around all of it is if we rush through something, then we end up with a rushed job. And so I have tons of experience, even recently, where I probably booked some things too fast and didn't have a lead time that I want. So I want to, we're going to talk about a perfect world today. I'll share maybe some of the bad stuff later. But in a perfect world, we want to have enough time where we've considered the property, we've considered the capital, we've considered the information that we already have. We've connected with the tenants to see what their considerations are. This last batch, we actually put out a survey ahead of time. So we had a really good idea on where our tenants were feeling, what we asked specific questions about, if they would like to stay, what upgrades would they like to see in the home, what changes would they like made, so that we actually had a different eye on the property in considering more than just capital, more just than what our needs from a property standpoint, but what are our tenants needing? What are they wanting? So if you think even more from, if you saw the last segment on the ideal tenant, very simple to that is attracting our ideal tenant. It's also keeping them and making sure that we're listening to their needs. So I want to have the time. So when I'm looking at how to schedule on my property maintenance, I want to have the time. What lead time needs to go out in order for a tenant to respond, view my email, think about the issues that they might want to present, have us get that feedback back out, have me share it with Phil or our maintenance team or whoever you have that's going out with an opportunity to really consider it, and then be able to go with the right critical eye while looking at a number of things. So we have, of course, procedures and checklists that we review. So looking at, okay, so here's let's say the 10 things. I'm going to share our maintenance checklist out in the group afterwards. But here's, let's say, the 10 things we're going to look at. So top stuff, we have it broken down on kind of exterior, plumbing, electrical, furnace, what levels of maintenance, are there any tenancies issues? So we've got, let's say, 5 sections that we're looking at. And then you've got different angles. So I look at it differently than Phil. I'm thinking about our tenants. I'm thinking about what they need or what changeover or what updates might need to happen there. And Phil's thinking about the furnace and the plumbing and what might need to change there. So how do we manage to take the right chunk of time in a busy schedule to look at this in a critical way, supportive on either end, on a tenant and a mechanical support service piece. So I'll just kind of share my screen just to keep us on point, or keep me on point, and look through some of the things. So again, I've touched on the taking the time, the how to schedule. So I think really the piece for that is preparation that I think about for the most, and having enough time. I know what we've done in the past is we've booked inspections, and then we've ended up with like, oh, I've got an hour and a half at each property, but then one property has more issues and it takes more time. So wanting to make sure that you have enough time and flexibility that it works. Have those checklists ready. but be able to be flexible within it. We're all still people, so we want to review, we want to see. Here's the thing, we've had some come up and we've had to make some major changes during this time right now in COVID. We've literally booked things and had to cancel them. We've got to care for everyone else's safety as everyone's safety. And so in looking at all of those pieces, we've got to be flexible. And I find that's probably the biggest thing I can share is that in my one, well, I probably have many failings, but my one failing is that when I feel pressure or tense, I can become somewhat inflexible where I'm like, that's the time, this is what we've got. But honestly, we're all people. We're just going to work through it. What is your intent? What's your intention of doing these maintenance meetings? It's to have a great, valuable property to provide to your tenants. It's to ensure that your tenants have what they need. It's to make sure that we're trying to mitigate any problems before they occur. So all of these things, if it's creating a problem to make it happen, then maybe we need to book it for another day. So what do you look for when you're on site? What questions do you ask? I mean, I don't expect the tenants to be home. We do 100 of these, so we do a lot. I do have to kind of move them all through in a period of time when I'm trying to coordinate that much. So there's a mix between, coordinating what we can, what's best, and being able to meet with people and not, and it doesn't always work out perfectly. But I can ask a lot of those questions up front. So usually I'm thinking specifically around their happiness in the property and adjustments and changes they'd be looking for, what they'd be looking for differently if they were to move, because that gives me good insight on what I might be able to change in the current property. What might be happening seasonally. So right now, fall inspections, while it's snowing in Calgary, we were reminded really quickly on how many snow shovels might be needed. So sometimes it's really, really simple stuff. We always think maintenance is bigger, but it doesn't have to be. So it can be simple stuff. So those are the kinds of questions that I look at. There's a few others I'll share, but definitely in looking at that true cost of deferred maintenance. So this is probably one of my favorite topics, and really kind of getting into, and I'll close my screen here just to talk to you guys again, but just getting into that difference between when we are holding back on things. Like, I don't know if hopefully I'm not the only one that's ever had an old furnace, but if you're waiting to see how long that furnace is going to last, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for like, is it a day that it goes, or how does that work? So it's that routine maintenance that we do that allows us to have an idea on when we are going to really need to do it. Does that make sense? So kind of looking at where do we manage? So when I look at like unnecessary damages, is small plumbing issues that can easily be resolved that turn into costly renovations if it leaks into the kitchen cabinets for months on end without being aware, that actually can create and damage that entire cabinet. So it's looking at that level and gauging that difference. If you're in the properties, so we want to be in our properties 4 times a year. So generally how I see that is I see 2 formal reviews, and we call them reviews, not inspections, because I want it to also be comforting. It's not about inspecting my tenants or inspecting the property. I think inspection comes off a little bit harsh. We just want to come in and routinely check on the property. We want to make sure and have a gauge on how is things aging. So maybe we have old windows, but they're doing fine. But we're going to watch them, right, every quarter and see how well now I can start to gauge that fine is adjusting on the other end, because I'm watching it and I'm monitoring the difference, if that makes sense for people. So I'm monitoring what's happening and what's going on there. We're in the properties regularly. So right now we're going in spring and fall is what I would call my formals. So I have to really think about where are specific maintenance that you need to consider in the spring. We start to think about yards, lawn, water, fences, exteriors, all of these things. And then what we think about in the fall for like closing up, preparing for winter. What does that look like differently? And then we do informal inspections, which would be reviews, which would be at renewal. So we're going in once a year, hopefully to renew a lease or change over a tenant. And then we're going in for holiday gifts. So we want to go in for holiday meetings and have fun. So we want to go in for fun, informal visits as well. which often will let some guard down and share a little more information and let us see kind of what's happening on the properties. So the true cost of deferred maintenance for me, everything for the most part, as I share my screen again, is going to be relational, right? So what I'm thinking about, increased service calls can happen if I'm not maintaining things. If I'm not maintaining an older furnace or hot water tank or issues, things that we're watching. Failed mechanical and plumbing. Increased vacancy. So this one is key for me because I think that is actually as a result of poor tenant relationship. If we don't have a good tenant relationship, you're going to end up with increased vacancy. That's not just because you might have old cabinets in your home. It's because the tenant feels like you're not taking care of them. So I can take care in many ways, and it might not still be changing those old cabinets. But if they know that I'm watching and paying attention to things and tightening things and looking after things, it makes a big difference. So for me, your true cost of deferred maintenance at the end of the day is truly, it's all, everyone can talk about the maintenance side on the extra costs and what have you, but it's truly a vacancy. That's how I perceive it for sure. So, okay, secret benefits. So my absolute favorite, I'm going to stop my share because I want to talk about these things before you read it too much ahead. And I'm still watching the chat to see if anybody has any questions as we kind of run through this stuff because we're going through pretty quick tonight. And I'm excited to just see what people are looking for. So, like I said, in every different story that I have on situations, what's worked, what hasn't worked, there's no perfect recipe. There's going to be pieces, there's going to be timelines. So we had one. I'll tell you a few stories. So we had one, and so just recently we've been doing a bunch of inspections, and recently we were in on one, checked the plumbing, did everything that we were supposed to do, did it correctly. But what's correctly? So then 2 days later, I was like, so weird, like 2 days, like, did we do something wrong? 2 days later, the drain started leaking. So I was like, first I thought, did we not even look at the drain? So it wasn't me personally. Obviously, if I looked at the drain, it wouldn't help anybody. So I was like, did we not even look at the drain? No, maintenance said they checked the drain. So what's checking the drain? Well, really, to thoroughly check the drain, they'd have to pull everything out from under the sink. They'd lay paper towel, they'd run the sink, they'd fill the sinks up. So when you think about the amount of time, so let's say if we are gauging an hour and a half to be on a property looking at things, and are you testing or checking? So you're testing, okay, nothing's wet. I've looked inside under the cabinets, there's no problem that I can foresee on a naked eye, but I didn't test. We're not doing a full home inspection here. That'd be like, I don't know, guys, if you've got one or two doors, maybe do that. Maybe do 4 hours. It's certainly up to you. And that's kind of that mix between how much time and could you even guarantee that? Has anybody had a home inspection before where it didn't come up with something, right? So it's about trying to manage and mitigate, but there's no 100%. Like you're in, we look, and then wow, this drain fails like the following 2 days later. There was some other really unique stuff that I'm going to admit it here, guys. I'm honest and I'm good, but it's somewhat vulnerable. Is because we've had different eyes on the properties this year that they saw things that we didn't see. Where Phil and I have been in these properties for years and didn't notice. So, what could you do differently to make sure that you're getting a different view? That you're not walking past the same problem in your house because you just always walk past it and you're not noticing it, and then somebody else walks in and they see it. So it is a mix of that. I really value having that other opinion or having a checklist or a process or a way to make sure that you are looking at those things, that you are. So we essentially methodically go through. Ideally, we'd like to do it before snow, do the outside, but you're not there while it's raining. Right? So I want to ask a lot of questions. We do get our eaves troughs cleaned every year. So those are important. We're checking the downspouts, making sure things are flowing. But if it's not raining when we're there, which hopefully it's not, because it'd be a miserable day to go around for inspections, but it's actually also a very valid one. I'll throw that out there as a little tip that no one will thank me for. But going to the properties when it's raining is you see a lot more. So if you've only got a few and you can schedule that in that way, you'd be surprised. Because sometimes I think it's similar is that our tenants don't see it either. They're coming in every day. So I've had a few times where I was frustrated that a tenant didn't tell me something, that actually something started to become damaged and I didn't know about it. And yet in extreme ownership, that doesn't have anything to do with the tenant or their skill set or their ability. It's on me. I've got to be in, I've got to watch it. And I think oftentimes what I find is it's that where it rolls into something larger than it was. So it was a teeny drop or a teeny leak and they didn't want to bother me with it, or they were busy and didn't think to bring it up. And then it started to become a little bit more and was an annoyance. It was the worst timing for them as well. And they were busy and everybody's busy in their life. And we end up with a snowball effect. That by the time I'm informed about it, I've got some tenants who are pretty annoyed because it's been going on for a long time for them now. They may have even told me a couple times about it, but it was small at that point. Now it's snowballed into something huge. Everyone's frustrated. Timing is tight. There's maybe additional damages. So it's how much we can get in front of that, where honestly, my biggest secret benefit all day long is going to be tenant relationship. No matter what order or what thing that I talk about is tenant relationship, because at the end of the day, we're building trust. We're building trust. We want to make sure our tenants feel supported, that they don't feel like they're being a pest when they're bringing something to us, and that we're responding to it quickly, but also triaging it in such a way. This is why I'm efficient property assistance. And I'm trying to triage it in such a way that we're not running to do one small thing that's costing an arm and a leg or a minimum trip all the time. So some layer of building that mix between building that trust, building that connection, having that support where they're comfortable to share with me the little things that are happening before they become big things. And at the same time, allowing us to triage that so that we can group them with our quarterly attendances, unless it's something major. That in a nutshell is probably what I try to do. And so it's that mix between, of course, we're going to go to those high priority things, but we don't want the low priority things to be left forever. And I think that's that death of small pieces is when those low priority things, they niggle at people for a long period of time and nothing ever gets resolved. That's what we want to do during inspections, to be honest. I want to get those little bits finished. I want to make sure, I want to group them. I want to get a bunch of that done. And I want to make sure the routine maintenance and having our eye on things. So I'll share my screen again, but so you can see all the secret benefits as I see them anyways. And I love for those of you on live tonight to share some of the secret benefits that you've experienced, because for me, for sure. So that increased information, here's the thing. I learn so much about the properties every time I'm there, because I don't live there. I'm not walking in there every day. The tenants that are walking in there every day don't get blind to certain things. They don't see it the same way, whereas I show up and I'm like, hey, what is that? They're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or I didn't notice it. Oh yeah, it leaks on that downspout every time it rains. Like, I want to ask a lot of questions around how are things going, and really learn a lot of information and a lot more information about the tenants as well. I've learned many things when I'm in on the properties, having an informal or routine visit. It's different. I think it feels too formal when it's always like, oh, let's inform the landlord about this. It's like, or mandatory landlord information, as opposed to like, we're checking things out, we care, and then a lot more information comes about the property and the tenants and the neighbors and their dogs and all sorts of fun stuff. I've talked about the relationship probably too much. And then capital planning. So capital planning is a huge thing. And just to chat with you guys again, like, how many of you actually have a formalized capital plan for your property? Like full on, a 5-10 year line of what needs to be done on the property, what's the age of your hot water tank, what's the age of your furnace, what's the age of your roof, what's the age of your windows, how much will those things cost, when do you want to replace them. I think it's actually unusual. I think a lot of homeowners don't have that. I think we have loose ideas about, we know we eventually need to do something, and then I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that waits and puts it off to the very end. So I have to work really hard on the properties to make sure I have that capital plan. But that capital plan only comes through as strong to me when I can actually see it. So the ability to actually observe some of those future needs, where I walk in on the property and I'm like, shoot, yeah, it's an original furnace in here. Or these aluminum windows are really drafty. I know that inherent. I have the list, I have the maintenance review, but to actually look and see it, it's a huge reminder. You need to be on your property. You need to be on your property minimum twice a year, guys. You've got to be in there. And whether it's you or a section of you, someone you trust has to be in on those properties. And if you're not going yourself and you're sending in someone, then get the photos, get the report, get the details enough for your own eye, because everyone sees things differently. And that's where I think in the ownership piece and moving blame from why didn't the tenant tell me to everyone sees things differently, and we're all caught up in our own stuff, and we've all got busy schedules, so we can't expect our tenants to notify us of everything that's going wrong, because they just won't know, and I don't even know sometimes when I look at it. So how do we make sure? So I see a note about a question around using toilet monitor, like detecting leaks, doing routine tests, flapper changes. Definitely. So Phil's like the toilet guy. We have replaced, I don't know, over 100 toilets. I think the city of Calgary had a water sense, what was it, a review there a number of years ago. They were giving you $50 or whatever back. We did the whole piece in the review. There's a lot of things too around toilets that people don't realize, in where your wax seals are going to dry up after a period of time, like things, there's general maintenance. So I appreciate the question out in the chat, because it's general maintenance around toilets. There's a level of maintaining or adjusting or repairing an old toilet to replace it. So we're pretty, I think in most things, I know you could change this is terrible that you guys have me on for this part, guys. I apologize. I'll get Phil to send a little note afterwards. But I know that you can change a cartridge or a washer in the faucet, but if it takes just as long to make that change and you still have an old faucet with a new cartridge or a new washer, is it worth it? Now, sometimes it is. There's some, very expensive high-end pieces where it makes sense to change the innards or the parts. We've kind of moved past that with toilets. So for the last few years, we've been actually using a Costco WaterSense toilet, really affordable, fantastic, works well in rentals, nice looking, no problem toilet. And so with that, it's affordable. It can go in. By the time you're done changing the flappers and different things like that, personally, we've been just flipping out the toilet on that age piece. But definitely looking at, and where are you at? I mean, I love this question too, because I think about when you look at maintenance, are you looking at your utility bills before you go out? So how many of these properties, and sometimes I find it actually a negative. I know there's a lot of ways of looking at your responsibility as a landlord for utilities, but sometimes I see it as a negative if you're not getting your utility bills. So if the tenant's responsible for the utilities, which you could say, that's on their dime, but I'm like, I don't know. If there's some serious issues, I want to kind of know about it to mitigate problems with my house. So if the tenant's paying for their own utilities, are you asking to maybe see the last few utility bills before you go in? So I would be monitoring that a little bit. That's how we monitor most of our plumbing issues. or if you're going to have any other problems, such as grow-ups, it can easily be found. And if the tenants are responsible for their own utilities, they might be more apt to maybe speak something like that by, because you wouldn't notice it. So I'm kind of open to asking and monitoring those utility bills on the property. As much as they're the tenant's bill, they do reflect what's going on in the house. They do reflect if there's issues with the furnace, if there could be issues with the hot water tank, with the toilets, with leaks in the home. So all of those things, I want to know if they're blowing breakers. Is that a question that you've ever asked your tenants? Hey, how often is a breaker tripping? Is it the same breaker? Like, if breakers are tripping in the home, that's the issue. If it's a one-off, then okay, that's a one-off. The breaker went off once in 1 year when I stood on my head and had popcorn and everything else going at the same time. But if it's regular, then that breaker, that's a sign. The breaker could be failing. So we have all these signs. So you think about checklists or questions or things that we want to do. Most of the things I'm asking is in relation to trying to drill down those signs. Is the house trying to tell me something? Is the utility bill trying to tell me about a leak that I could know about well before my ceiling is damaged? Or, well before there's a fire in the electrical panel. So all of those kinds of pieces is about how do we get the right information ahead of time to make sure that we're mitigating those problems as early as possible and creating those capital plans on the properties. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody, and in that it's about, it doesn't necessarily have to be everything all the time, but if you're in there regularly enough, you're asking the right questions, you actually care and you're listening, you're paying attention to the signs on what the house is showing, then it's going to make a difference, right? I think I see it as simple as that. It's just keeping the eye and the care into the property, having a plan, and then not being shocked. Because I think the other side, it's interesting because maintenance isn't our favorite topic. Again, like I said, mainly because it's stuff that's coming up. And honestly, it's probably stuff that we knew was coming up, and then we're like, oh, it came up, right? Like we knew that washing machine, we knew that appliance was going to go, and we didn't put away for it maybe. And so what can we do? So I tie in time and maintenance, so key. Scheduling it out, having the right amount of time, preparing thoroughly, but listening to the things we don't want to hear and actually budgeting and clocking it right out. Like what's happening on my property? What does it need? Because that's how we're the best rental housing providers. I think how we come through strong and provide fantastic properties, no matter what the age or scope. They don't need to be brand new, but if they're cared for and we're showing that we're caring for it and we're on top of those kinds of things and we're quick to respond. And so maybe that's the piece I can openly admit as well. Like, I haven't always been the fastest to respond on things. Sometimes when they come in, so if I'm going to get triage, if I'm going to get 5 items coming in at once and 3 of them are like on fire priorities, what happens to the other 2? So making sure that I have those systems. So for me, maintenance inspections is part of that system. It's part of ensuring that I capture the things that may have been missed. That if I were to consider that I'm collecting data, at the best point, I'm always going to be, let's say I'm always going to be on top. I'm going to get in, I'm going to respond to any issues all the time. But sometimes those small issues that fall between the cracks, at least it hasn't fallen for such a period of time, or hopefully ever, to the point that it's actually creating a vacancy where my tenant is moving out because they feel like I'm not responding to their needs. Instead, I'm collecting the small bits, resolving them, at the right time, collected with larger bits, trying to be as efficient and consistent as possible in all areas. And so while I'm looking at all of those pieces, if and when I miss anything, because I'm a human, then I've got those routine maintenance reviews that I go, oh, shoot, right, I forgot. Yes, you did have that. It was small. You did tell me you didn't care about it, but I remembered, and let's just get it fixed for you. right? So how many opportunities for quick wins can we have in these? So I look at it again twofold. What can we do that are quick wins, that are something that our tenants are excited or happy to have, and they're small, they're minor, while I'm doing the other pieces that save me costs and unnecessary damages down the road, because I'm looking after things as they're coming up, because I'm in there, while I'm also keeping an eye on my capital planning. And I truly think that's the difference, is that eye on the capital plan. Because I don't know about you guys, but it's true. If I don't see it, I do forget about it. It just isn't top of mind. So as strategic rental housing providers, as excellent landlords and landladies on here, we want to have everything top of mind. And I don't know about you, I'm a woman, but I prioritizing or not, or multitasking or not, it's hard to have everything always top of mind. So if I can do an eye for maintenance, so if you think about, that's why this is time for maintenance. It's like, okay, right now my focus is going to be on maintenance. So if I can think about maintenance 2 times a year fully, like spring and fall, I'm going to actually focus on maintenance. I'm going to create my capital spreadsheet. I'm going to think about what size my furnace filters are. I'm going to ensure that the properties have the right yard equipment that they need. I'm going to ask specific maintenance questions. Because believe me, other times of year, I'm going to ask different types of things and different types of questions, and we're going to focus on different pieces. So I don't know if it's helpful, but that's what works for me. It's compartmentalizing where I'm focused, and then when my focus is there, it's a really strong direct focus. And then creating all the right systems in there so that we have excellent preparation. We actually, complete fully and have fantastic follow-up. The other thing is we collect all of this information, and if we don't do anything about it, we just assess, and don't follow anything up, that's also very frustrating. Frustrating for us, it's frustrating for our tenants. So follow through. What are the things? What are the promises? I really enjoyed it when we started doing the surveys with the tenants, because I found they could give me an eye and they wouldn't answer it in the same way. When I just say, what's up for maintenance, they wouldn't answer it in the same way than when I ask if you could do it, if you could change anything in your property, what would it be? In a survey, then I got all sorts of great responses. And a lot of those ideas were, a few of them I was like, are you kidding? I could never do that. But most of them were really, really good ideas. So that's a big piece that I had tonight. I'd love to hear more. I wasn't sure how many people were going to come on live, so I just left this on a webinar base, but I'm still watching the chat to see if anybody has any specific questions. I'd love to hear about anyone else's specific maintenance, if anybody's done a recent inspection, or what that follow through might look like if you actually have capital plans. So all of those kinds of things, I'm going to post it in our Facebook as well, to just see, what's out there. As far as I know, we've been sharing a few different checklists. I think I want to lean more into the capital side as well, of just like, what do you have for capital plans? Do you have a budget? Do you have like a list of what needs to happen? Are people getting their ducts cleaned? So there's a lot of different pieces on duct cleaning. So we do our duct cleaning biannually, so every 2 years. We also went through a lot of different providers because we wanted to make sure we had someone who would also do the dryer ducts, because we found a lot of them were skipping that. And that's the one I'm scared the most about, probably, right, is the dryer duct. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us to kind of pull maybe some information together and share in our Facebook group, or you can certainly email me. Just some of those ideas, like how do you make sure or manage furnace filters being changed? How often are you getting your ducts cleaned? Are you making sure the dryer ducts are included? What other tips and tricks? Because it's not all about what ones that Phil and I've created over the years, and we've certainly made a lot of mistakes throughout them. probably our biggest mistake in the early years was not doing these often enough. I think there were times where we were in once a year. I guess I would say twice, once for the renewal or the changeover, and we'd get a fall or a spring in, but we weren't consistent in getting them both in. We weren't consistent with holiday visit. When I talk, it's interesting, this is called time for maintenance. I think tenant relationship maintenance equal to property maintenance. So the maintenance side that we've found in holiday, and that's coming up now, in holiday visits, that maintenance, that informal visit that creates such a supportive structure in, again, building that trust and knowing that we care. I would almost cancel any other, if I had to cancel, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but if I had to cancel any inspection, it would actually be all but that one. To me, that holiday visit, that it doesn't have to be, like, we do it at Christmas, but it doesn't have to be at Christmas, but just that appreciation visit that we do every year, the maintenance that does on a long-term relationship, I think is paramount. Of course, we're also on the property at the same time. And I find even with the relaxed atmosphere, we actually learn and see more, even though we're not doing formal testing toilet leaks and what have you at that time. We learn a lot more. We end up seeing a lot more, and we end up being told a few different things sometimes on those informals. I don't know if I'm the only one, but on the informal visits, I find that they actually give us far more information. And on the formal ones is when we're trying to be super sleuths and figure it out for ourselves, right? So yeah, I just see, so about a question around what we give tenants for appreciation on the holiday visits. We've done a number of different things over the years, and hopefully this will be a great topic maybe even to lean into next month on, I'll post it out in our Facebook group to see what everyone's doing. So I would say last year was our most positive. We had blankets done up with our logo on them, and they're like really nice, fuzzy, plush blankets. They had our logo on them. We did a little goodie bag. I always like to do a few goodies. My dad's British, so I don't know if that's a thing, but it's always around some chocolates and sweets. So we put a little goodie bag together, some Starbucks gift cards, and thank you notes, and we delivered these plush blankets. And it was so well received, we're actually considering ordering them again this year and going through our list to see like which tenants got them last year and which tenants are new, and kind of doing a mix between the plush blankets, and then we're also looking at the tumblers. They're just so easy to have those takeaway. They're more of the wine style kind of go cup piece. It seems to be really popular. So we'll do that. I'll always still do a little bit of the treats. And we do a few gift cards throughout the year. Actually, we have a few contests that we run, but I find that we've been doing it close to our model. Like what's our values as a business? What are our missions? So our values are around, security, comfort, safety in the home. So that's kind of where I think a blanket, comfort, different kind of pieces. We've looked at, a number of things along there. We only had, I think it was only one mishap last year. We really want to meet all the tenants when we deliver, but again, we don't always get a chance to see everybody. And so at one of the visits last year, I think my husband Phil dropped off, and we had like a little pocket in the blanket where the logo is, and he put the little pouch of chocolates in there. We do exclusively pet-friendly rentals. And he was also fixing the dishwasher. So we'd done a test run on the dishwasher. So we like to multitask. And he had to go back to retest something. And so we had to go to another visit, swung back by half an hour later, goes in to test it. And the dog had snuck the candies out of the blanket and was literally carefully, as my husband tells the story usually, he was carefully unwrapping the chocolate and ready to dig into it right when he walked back in. So we got the chocolate away from him, took the candies away, went to leave, and was like, he just didn't feel right. So we popped back and was like, I better just double check the pillows. It was a really friendly dog, but it was the first time the dog ever snapped at him. And certainly what Phil found was the dog had actually stashed a couple of the candies in the pillows. So we'll be a little bit more cautious on how we deliver the candies this year. But yeah, there's lots of good ideas. So let's share that in our Facebook group. I'm glad for those of you, again, that came on live tonight. I'm going to just go into, share my screen and go into the closing pieces, but let's keep it going. Like if there's other questions, I'm going to post this recording, and then we'd like to just continue to share all this information out with the group and get into what our conversation will be next month. So in just recapping, we went through everything, and I guess the last piece, you know, for those of you who might be watching this on recording that don't know about our services, or maybe need a reminder. So definitely part of my company, and a lot of what, you know, we value doing this because we were once just on our own and made lots of mistakes ourselves. So we provide a lot of services. So just wanting to share that we do, you know, offer that one-to-one coaching support. So I do a lot of support around cash flow, rescue or start up my rental, looking at, you know, having the most satisfied rental. What does that look like? What's your rental plan or program? We do a lot of support services for self-managing investors. So we do everything from actually providing those inspections that we talked about tonight. We actually support with tenant placement, tenant communication, all of the maintenance piece. So thankfully my husband is skilled there because I am no help at all. We actually have options to do complete joint venture structures. So if you're interested in that as well, I think I have it on another screen, but we do have opportunities where we work together and team up. We look at cash flowing real estate. We really value on doing something that works for everybody. So reach out as well. I always offer a free check-in session just to see where you're at, what you might be looking for, and what we might be able to offer you. So yeah, this is our YYC JV. So I have this exclusive. I'm actually going to deal drop, I think, 3 properties here in the next couple of days. I'm just getting all the details. But Calgary's hot. So we do strictly YYC. That's all of our investing. Even though I'm in Toronto right now, that's just because I'm originally from here. My family's here, but we are full on in Calgary. And I do offer a deal drop that this is very exclusive. It only goes to pre-qualified investors that are serious and interested in maybe moving forward and building some cash flow. So with this, we just do a 30-minute call to qualify, and I send those deal drops out. And like I said, I've got a few going out in this upcoming week. So do let me know if that's of interest. And I think everybody hopefully is a member of our YYC Rental Housing on Facebook. I'm really thankful for everybody that did come on live tonight, and for those of you afterwards that are watching. And let's keep that going. Let's keep the questions coming. I'm going to close out, I think, a little early tonight because we were a bit quiet with the questions. And let's share everybody's advice because I want to hear more than my voice. But we have been doing this for a long time, and we do really want to make sure we're sharing that support. So please reach out. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and happy Halloween coming up. It might be a little bit different this year, but still finding a way to enjoy and stay warm out there. So let me know. Let me know. I'd love to hear any stories about how your property maintenance goes, or what next steps you're looking to do. And let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for coming on tonight, and I will look forward to seeing you guys. Oh, I've got a Q&A. Let me just make sure I'm answering. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. No, I look forward to talking to everybody again real soon. Have a great night.